The only constant was change. Okay. So yeah. So what I don't know. Yeah. So I guess with that, where I would start is that I think right now we're looking at a generational. We're looking at a foundational change, right? So I used to tell people back in the day. I used to tell them that we were on the edge of the greatest wealth transfer in history. And what I was referring to was, the baby boomer generation, becoming of age and transferring all of its money to, the up and coming generation. But I realize now that wealth transfer or change is actually going to be the incoming of the digital era. And I think the digitization of everything is going to, it is what's going to define, our generation. So digitization of everything. So nothing will be excluded, right? So the fact that this comes to include our money is absolutely groundbreaking. Not just money and what currency is, which is a whole rabbit hole in itself, but NFTs too. I mean, and the tokenization, to tie into the last conversation, the tokenization of absolutely everything. It's going to be, it's going to be the greatest change. It's going to change absolutely everything. There's not going to be anything that's immune to this. And I think the big takeaway is that we'll begin to see the denationalization of money, which I think is unbelievably powerful. I don't think many people realize exactly how much money or how much power is really given to our governments by allowing them to actually issue the currency. So, a quote from Nathan Rothschild was, if you give me control of a nation's money supply, I care not who makes its laws, which is basically saying, if you get to mint the money, you run the show, right? And honestly, that's exactly what governments have done. And anytime we've had a truly fiat currency, fiat meaning by decree, right? We've always gone to the true value of our currency, the intrinsic value, which is zero. And we're on route to do that right now, and and inflation, right? Known as the invisible tax. That's the greatest expense that any of us have in our life, right? Taxes are one of two certainties, right? Death being the other one. So I think the world about to see a change, unprecedented. This is going to eclipse anything that we saw or could even imagine with the internet, right? Which was a very big change, which isn't done yet, right? Web 3.0 is coming, and it's going to. If we look at how marketing has changed over the last decade, right? Marketing used to be a one-way megaphone, right? They would blast their message out to us, and that was Web 1, right? So Web 2 allowed us to actually communicate back, right? And as we see now with marketing, it's more of an engagement mechanism as opposed to just blasting out a message. They want you to buy in. They want you to identify with the product. They want to see see what your beliefs and values are. How you relate to them personally. Web 3.0, I mean, well, we're just gonna change the game completely all the way through. Things like the metaverse and whatever's coming, like it is literally going to change reality.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, very true. We're seeing how drastic these changes are and are going to be. Like, there's so many implications that this has, and I think it's not just a marginal shift. It's something that's revolutionary when it comes to the various systems that we find in this world, be it financial, be it technological, be it social even. And I'm very curious, is there a particular project that you're working on in the blockchain space right now?
No, I'm not really in crypto right now at all, to be honest. So my interest will be more financial, to be honest. I trade, that's about it. I'm looking to get into it. I would like to take up programming. I want to learn, the language and whatnot. But yeah, financial is my only real interest in it right now.
I see. So when we dive down that financial route then, and you talk about inflation being the biggest tax, what do you think the end goal of the centralized governments are right now? Because they are printing money and inflation is occurring, right? And of course that they're aware of that, and maybe they're trying to cushion the blow of the hit on the markets that's occurred in
Yeah.
the past year. What do you think that their incentives are?
Well, so what I do for a living is rentabartender.ca. So it's event staffing. So essentially, whenever there's a change, my bartenders want, it's always more for them and less for me. And as far as governments, that's the end goal. That's the game. And honestly, that's what they do when they create inflation, right? Governments cannot create wealth. They can only simply redistribute it. So when they create more money and they create, say, stagflation, where our wages are stagnant year over year, but everything costs more, they're expropriating our wealth. And their end goal is to wind up with more control. And I think they're politically, we're gonna have some differences here, whether you're left or the right. But I think honestly, they're absolutely using COVID to do that exactly, right? Like this is, you can't do anything right now in Australia without consent of the government, and it's coming here, right? You take any organism and its first and primary goal is what? Survival, right? So the government's first goal is to survive. And the next thing is, if you get a fish and you put it in the tank, it's going to grow to whatever size that tank is, right? So if we look at that, if we look at government and what percentage of the economy they made back in the 1940s, it was less than 10%. It's over 40 today. So you can't have a conversation that's not political, because everything is political, because government is in everything, right? Including the issuance of the money supply, which is an absolute disaster. We saw this in the dark ages, right? History repeats, So with that said, I think honestly, as a libertarian, capitalist, and an entrepreneur, I think the denationalization of money is massively overdue. But even just to talk about that, right? I guess that would be, financial education it's not in the system, and it's not in the system for a reason. They don't want us to be financially educated. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he likened it to slavery back in the day. It was illegal to educate slaves how to read or write, because an educated slave was a dangerous slave. Today, we are the modern slaves. And that said, so basically, if we look at the governments and how they can control us with the money supply, it's basically comes down to two things. They control the amount of money in circulation, and they control the rates, the interest rates, which is also known as the price of money, right? So this is something that the free market should be able to decide on, but it is really controlled by the FOMC, which is a very small handful of men. So with that, how does the government use this to control us? Well, basically, by controlling the price of the money, right, they can control our incentives, right? And that's what economics is. It's behavioral science, right? So we look at how people respond to things. So by keeping the money, by keeping the interest rate low, right, they give us no incentive to save money. Putting money in the bank, it doesn't pay. Right, the interest rates or the price of money has been ultra low. It's been ultra low since the last 2000 bubble, and now the other thing they control is the money supply. Right, they control the amount of money that's in circulation, and a lot of us think of money as something tangible, right? Something that exists, something that's real, something that has utility and all that. It's not. It's not backed by anything. It hasn't been since '71. So in 1971, Nixon, without permission of Congress, took us off the gold standard, and that's when we became a truly fiat currency. Fiat, the Latin word for by decree, meaning it only has value. Yeah, and that goes right back into the government's end goal. You know what I mean? They don't want anything going without their say so, right?
Yeah, unreal.
And honestly, giving them control of the money supply. I mean, the amount of power that comes with this is absolutely insane, because when you look at the money supply and it's this, and they double it, right? They get to spend the money first, so they get to spend the money today at the value of yesterday, right? And then we have to deal with the value of the money tomorrow. Let's think of, and a good way to think of inflation is this, right? We want to think of soup, right? So if you make soup, you have 2 liters of soup, whatever it is, and then you add water to the soup. You actually don't have more soup. You're just watering it down. You have the same amount of soup as you had before, but you've diluted it. And that's what inflation is. And when we dilute the soup, we need more of it to buy whatever goods we used to buy with it, right? So that's why the cost of everything continues to rise. That's what a lot of people think inflation is. They think it's rising prices, and it's not. It's actually a symptom of debauching the currency supply, right? If somebody had a runny nose, you wouldn't say he has a runny nose from, that's not the cause of it. The runny nose is a symptom of the underlying cold. So the underlying problem is that the government has control of the money supply, and they're constantly debauching it, and adding to that supply because, again, they get the benefits of being able to spend the new supply. And now, when back in the day, when governments declared wars, they used to have to end at some point because, well, they'd run out of money. That's not a problem nowadays. When you have the printing press, you don't have to go to Congress and ask for permission to, fund this, that, and the other. You just print the money. You don't need our taxes either. They can just print the money. But they've got us conditioned, to paying taxes, back when, money was tangible and real. So why are they going to stop with that? You know what I mean? And actually, the funny thing is that, taking this as taxes actually, adds to its value because now it's something that we need to have, right? So it makes the money seem more legitimate and more necessary, right? And and money, money itself doesn't actually exist, right? Money itself is only an idea, right? And honestly, this is a great gift that Satoshi Nakamoto gave us, is that he made us question this again. Like, what is reality? What is money? Because it's a conversation we wouldn't have had otherwise. We were like fish in water. We don't even see it. We just most of us can't even define what money is, right? We work our whole lives for it. That's insane. So what is money? Well, we go to Aristotle and the theory of forms, and we look at what a cup is. Well, a cup is like money in the sense that it doesn't exist either. Is a cup red? Is it blue? Is it tall? Is it short? Is it ceramic? Is it glass? There's paper, whatever. I can put my hands together and I can form a cup, right? So what a cup is really something that performs a certain function. Same with money, right? Now, historically, gold always performed that function, right? And the 3 things that that are that used for that function is, one, it needs to be a medium of exchange, right? So if I got 6 chicken and I want to trade for a cow, you know what I mean? They're not exactly divisible, which is another property of money. But so medium of exchange is the main thing that we think of, that a currency fulfills that role. The other thing is we need a unit of account, right? Because we need to know that the 6 chickens is worth or 1 cow is worth however many chickens, right? We can't compare apples to oranges, right? So we need so we need a unit of account in order to conduct that exchange. Last and not least, and this is where currency fails, right? So if we think of currency, we go back to the Latin word, and it's basically the flow, right? So think of currency, electricity, in the walls. You know what I mean? Currency is not to stay still, right? Currency is to conduct transactions. It goes where it's needed. It runs around. So currency does those 2 things very well. Unit of account, medium of exchange. Where it fails is a store of value. And this is what differentiates, currency from money. And currency has notoriously done a very horrible job of being a store of value. Since 1914, when the Fed, created, the dollar, it's lost over 90% of its purchasing power, right? They just announced a $2 trillion stimulus package, which looks like it was 3.5 initially. They peeled it back to 2 trillion. And it doesn't look like it, and it might not go. I thought this thing was rubber stamped because all they ever do with the debt ceiling is raise it, right? I don't even know why they have it, to be honest. But the magic of modern monetary theory says that they can print unlimited and it's okay. If a company did this, it goes bankrupt. For the government, somehow, it plays by its own rules. And we've given them this power, you know what I mean? And the change that it's brought along, it's not been good. Inequality, I'm right-winged, right? And I think mostly libertarian, less government is more. So I'm always trying to understand, how can I make the other side care about this, right? If I'm right-winged, how do I get the left to take an interest in money? And the answer is, make them understand the cause of inequality. It is the money supply. They blame everything but, and this is a shell game played by the media to make us look at the billionaires, the corporations. They glance over the government. The government is what enables these billionaires and corporations to get away with paying no taxes. Who made the rules, right? If a prisoner escapes from a prison, do we blame him? No. Who is supposed to be guarding him? Corporations and billionaires are going to do what they can get away with. They need to be police, but they paid off the government, so we use them as a sacrificial lamb. You know what I mean? But we don't see, and all we do is just yell and scream, which nothing comes from that. You know what I mean? This asking to increase the minimum wage. That is such a symptom of the problem. It's not funny. Fixing the runny nose does not get rid of the cold, right? So raising the minimum wage, it's just playing into the game, because there's no way the minimum wage can be raised fast enough to keep up with the amount of inflation these guys are pumping into the system. One, two, that just continues to incentivize them to put more money into the system. Again, they're first spender. Secondly, it puts you and I into a higher tax bracket, right? And again, it just gives them absolute complete control. The amazing thing that nobody's talking about yet really is the technology behind cryptocurrency, to be honest, because it fixes everything that's wrong with finance. It is immutable and transparent. Nothing about the government is transparent, or corporations or billionaires. They maybe they have to, maybe their tax returns are open to the public. But how much of that is really done, off chain? So yeah, it's a shell, honestly. So the government and corporations, they're in cahoots. We need to understand this, and one's not better than the other. And the billionaires are the money knows. They are a symptom of a broken system, right? The system actually wants these guys to exist, for the simple reason that their liquidity sink, which means the billionaires have all this money, right? And it's not out in circulation, right? The velocity of money and driving up prices. So they want this money out of circulation, right? The other thing is the reason the governments take care of the corporations the way they do is not because of the taxes that they pay in, it's because of the power that they have. But more importantly, the greatest asset the corporation brings to the table is not their taxes that they're going to pay in, but the tax base that they provide, which is what? It's you and I, right? Earned wages are taxed harder than any other form. Earned income is taxed the hardest amongst anything and everything, which should not be taxed at all. But why is it taxed, right? Not on a philosophical basis or what's right, what's wrong. It's taxed the hardest because it's easiest. They can take it off our check at source before we even get our own money. And that's another danger of centralization, right? So absolute power, absolute control, creates absolute power, right? So decentralization, we're starting to see that happen. And what that's going to look like in the workforce is it's going to look like people being freelancers. It's going to look like people, not necessarily getting a T4 or being issued, something from an employer, but it's going to have them being out there, generating their own money. And when they have to pay it in, and it's not automatically coming off the top, it's going to be a very different conversation.
Well, thank you for explaining the myriad of examples that have come to rise due to a centralized system and the issue with money. And it's true, it has so many collateral effects. It's even creating a wedge and further increasing the gap between wealth inequality, because the more money in supply, the more people who own investable assets such as real estate and stock, their value is going up, while the people who just own money itself, let's say the lower class, now their purchasing power is even less. So that gap is further being increased, unfortunately, by such printing. And I'm curious though, being that the premise of your talk is that the only constant is change, do you see that there's going to be a sort of collaboration between adoption from the government with crypto, or do you just see it being a complete rebound and traversing into a completely new system?
I don't think that, sorry, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, no worries.
So whoever has the power and the control wants to keep the power and the control. So the government's obviously looking to regulate this new technology and take control of it, right? But the death of the US dollar has been coming for decades now. I don't see the current system surviving, as much as the powers that be would obviously like to keep it that way. If we look at the electric vehicle and why that died in the early 1990s, it died for the simple fact that there was nothing wrong with the current system if you were an oil producer, right?
Yeah.
So the government wants to keep they're going to be resistant to change. Whoever the system is working for are going to do everything they can to maintain the system. The system is not working for the large majority of us. We need to bring the system down. But the governments aren't going to try and salvage it, right? So, if we remember back when Bitcoin first hit, it was all, drug dealers and illegal and everything, they didn't have nothing nice to say about it whatsoever, right? Now they're copying it. So CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, are basically, going to be how the government tries to maintain control, how they try to take control of this, right? And with that said, I think a lot of people are actually waiting for the government to give this the thumbs up, right? And a lot of people, we won't see mass adoption arguably until the government does give it the rubber stamp. But I think at that point, the idea of crypto will be completely dead, which is, empowerment of the people. and I think that, it's always a matter of risk and reward, right? So the longer you wait for the thing to be less risky, right, the less reward that's going to be left on the table. So I think governments will try to maintain the current system by bringing on CBDCs. We look at who's leading this charge, and it's going to be China, which has a horrible civil rights record. And this is what Orwell was talking about in 1984. This will be Big Brother, right? We used to think it was the commies and the Reds, but really it's all government. It's America too. It's a surveillance state now. And honestly, the technology that China's using is it's like it's a digital credit system, where they reward, good behavior and they punish bad, and they can switch you on and off, they can decide whether you can buy a train ticket or not, right? And it's coming here, it's coming here, and it's going to be completely Orwellian nightmare. And I think COVID is honestly starting to, with the digital passports now, this is them. This is the complete power grab that they've been, looking for. Whether this is something that they created, or if they're just opportunity, they're taking advantage of something that came up, doesn't matter. Like, this is something that's been in the talks for decades now. We've seen this coming, right? And what it is the people, reach out and they say to the government, save us, save us from something that, they're creating, fear rules, and this is how they govern by fear, right? It's this pandemic, they don't want it to go away, because this is how they get all their policies put through,
And just to wrap this up here and tying it back to Toronto and the North American economy, how do you feel that the trajectory with NFTs, with crypto, with blockchain as a whole has gone so far?
So yeah, I think the war we're going to see is going to be between suits and hoodies. So I think yeah,
So,
I think
so you do see a yes that there's a massive discrepancy and there's a juxtaposition right now between the powers that be currently and the financial, economic, social shifts that are happening because of blockchain.
yeah, absolutely. Nothing's going to be exempt from this. This is going to absolutely revolutionize life. You know what I mean, in every aspect. And then again, it's money that makes the world go round. But yeah, I think as far as Toronto goes, I think it's been it's in the top five as far as digital or financial tech, right? So I think
Yes, sir.
yeah, absolutely. We've got a great ecosystem of schools here in the city, and I think we're going to attract a lot of world talent. And I think this is how we're going to see that power shift. You know what I mean? Because honestly, as we go from fintech to DeFi, right? I think that cultural change is going to become incredibly pronounced.
And that's why we place a lot of emphasis on community and social tokens, because this is the bread and butter of it all. This is what's going to be the abundant stakeholder ecosystem. So I think it's overall quite optimistic. Thank you for your thoughts. Really appreciate it. We have to move forward to our next speaker, but Mike, it was great to be with you here today.
Great, same here, Anthony.
Thank you guys so much.